Thank you, thank you, thank you. Greetings, everyone. Greetings, everyone. Yes, you are on the Freedom Friday Forum here for tonight with the Woodson Banneker Jackson Bay Division, UNIA ACL RC2020. We have a pretty good program tonight, and we have a very knowledgeable person who will be giving us an update, well, with a picture or discussing with us. You're having what is, if you've seen the flyer, a spirited analysis and discussion. The brother's name is Maurice Carney, and I am here as host tonight. I'm waiting for my co-host, Baba Congo. He is not. He's having some problems getting on, I guess. So, meantime, let me just play a little bit of music so that we can start when he gets on. Let's see. Are you there, Baba Congo?
We black people are suffering centuries of years ago.
This is okay. In any event, okay, I think I see him now. So again, folks, my name is Baba Mosi Matsimila, President of the Woodson Banneker Jackson Bay Division, 330, UNIA ACL RC2020. And this is our monthly forum, the Freedom Friday Forum. This is the forum for June of 2021. And I am with my co-host, Baba Congo Africa. And I will let him introduce himself. Baba Congo, you need to unmute, Baba Congo.
They don't want to give us freedom.
I seem to be having issues. You need to unmute, Baba Congo. Well, I'm here with my co-host, Baba Congo Africa, who's still having a bit of technical problems with getting on. And meantime, let me introduce to you our presenter, Maurice Carney, who is the Executive Director of Friends of the Congo. And he will discuss with us the centrality of Congo to a free and liberated Africa. So I think it's time for me to get this music down. Okay. As I was saying, Brother Maurice will discuss with us the centrality of Congo to a free and liberated Africa. Now, I guess from this title here, it's going to be a long discussion because we're talking about a free and liberated continent. And I'm not so sure that it's free and liberated, but I'll let Brother Maurice Carney discuss that with us, bring that forward as to, or start with this discussion. Brother Maurice, greetings. Good
Greetings.
for you. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting Friends of the Congo to be a part of this evening's discussion. Appreciate the UNIA ACL, you, Bob Mosi, and Brother Paul Pumphrey for making this discussion possible. The title itself is aspirational.
Okay.
As everyone knows, in the recent chapter of the history of Africans, meaning most last 500 years or so, we've been struggling to free and liberate ourselves from the yoke of European colonialism, capitalism, white supremacy. And the position that we're in today, and the way in which Africans have been laid prostrate throughout the globe. And I don't know if I'm still there. Okay, throughout the globe, really can date back around 500 years or so, coming out of the mid to late 1400s, where people hear me okay? It seems like
Yes, I'm hearing.
yes,
Yeah.
where we really were victims, particularly of the Catholic Church, and generally of Europeans, European Christians, in the sense that the papal bulls issued out of the church in the late 1400s, which established the principle of the doctrine of discovery. That is to say, Europeans claimed any land that they came upon and anything therein that was not Christian, right? That's the essence of the doctrine of discovery. That is, you lay claim to whatever you come upon that is not Christian, which was the essence of the papal bulls and the period of discovery. And really, this doctrine of discovery governed our trade laws and contracts right up to this very day. So within that, from that late 1400s, and the notion of the doctrine of discovery, which ultimately led to the trafficking of Africans from the continent to the Western Hemisphere, across the Atlantic. The Congo was central in this initial exploitation of Africans, in this initial plunder of the African continent. What Dr. Evan van Sertima likened to the dropping of an atomic weapon on the African continent. And what our sister Marimba Ani coined the Maafa. So in this period, this initial plunder, 4 out of every 10 Africans that were shipped and trafficked to the West came out of the Congo region. If we were to believe the documentation provided by UNESCO and Emory University Slavery Database, where we, in the Congo at that time, we're talking about from Angola, Democratic Republic of Congo, Republic of Congo, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, right in the Central Africa region, is where Congo played a central role in the initial plunder of the continent. Contrary to the conventional wisdom that most Africans came from West Africa, but it was in fact from Central Africa, from the Congo region. So we see early on in this, I guess you can call it the embryonic stages or the nascent stages of the Maafa, of our being conquered people, subjugated people over the past 500 years or so. So that was the initial blow, and Congo was central to that. The Europeans doubled down on it after hundreds of years of trafficking Africans. That is the initial extraction of resources from the African continent, was the human being, the African. Then they doubled down on it in the late 1800s, doubled down on the exploitation by establishing what they call the Berlin Conference, or initiating the Berlin Conference in 1884, 1885, which was also named incidentally as the Congo Conference, 1884-1885. And Congo was central to that enterprise, where 14 European nations or so, the United States included, gathered in Berlin under the leadership of Otto von Bismarck for Europeans to establish their spheres of influence on the African continent so that they wouldn't go to war against each other, or they would reduce or abate the conflict among themselves in their scramble and their pursuit for control of different parts of the African continent. And Congo loomed so large that it was given to the King of Belgium as his own private property. And it was dubbed the Congo Free State. And part of the reason why it was dubbed the Congo Free State is because Europeans didn't want to battle over the Congo. So they were able to conduct free trade, free travel. That was the part of the condition for giving the king the ownership of the Congo. And within a 23-year period from 1885 to 1908, as a result of the king's rulership over the Congo, we saw that the population was decimated by 50%. Like half of the people were killed as the king extracted rubber and ivory. Anywhere from 10 to 15 million Congolese perished under the king's rulership. So what we see several things unfolding here. One, we see a classic case of the new phase of exploitation, moving from the human being, the extracting of human beings, which took place over 400 plus year period, 300 to 400 plus year period, to now the extracting primarily of natural resources. And not just the extracting of natural resources, but the extracting of natural resources that would fuel the development, the quote unquote development of Europe, right? So we know that the initial extraction of human resources was fundamental and foundational to the establishment of what we know as capitalism. There is no capitalism without slavery. Just ask Eric Williams, right? And the African was central to the development of capitalism. Now, capitalism moving into another stage, industrialization, we see that natural resources coming from the continent was vital to that. So that rubber that was extracted by the king over that 23-year period was critical to the burgeoning auto industry. It was at that time that Dunlop had discovered the pneumatic tire. We were moving into the development of bicycles and then automobiles. So what we see is the framework being continued, where the African continent serves as the fuel or the engine for the development of Europe through the exploitation of human resources and now natural resources. And what's additionally particular about the Congo is since the Maafa, since the trafficking of Africans from the continent to the West, no other African people have suffered and perished to the extent that the Congolese have. And that's not by accident. As I shared with you, they're central in the initial extraction of Africans, central at the outset of colonization through the Berlin Conference. So there isn't anywhere else, not on the planet, among Africans or non-Africans, where we saw 10 to 15 million people perishing at the dawn of the 20th century. And the resources coming out of that region being vital to the advancement the development and the functioning of key industries in the West. Now, Dr. Ron Walters, he's wrote a book on Pan-Africanism, and he made a point about where Africans are, wherever they are in the world. And he said there are two key things that you notice among Africans. And one is that we're always building communities. Irrespective of where we are, we're building communities. The second thing is that particular to our experience and existence is resistance. Africans are always resisting. So in this period when King Leopold II had control of the Congo, leading the resistance from the outside, right? Because there are plenty of Congolese leading the resistance from the inside. From the outside were Africans in the United States. So we're talking about figures like William Shepherd, who had gone to the Congo, lived with the Luba people, translated their language into English, and also documented the atrocities that were being committed by King Leopold II, to the point where the king tried to put him in jail and execute him for the resistance that William Shepherd and his wife Lucy Gant were doing at that time. And the research that he did, the documentation that he did, was picked up by others in the quote unquote international community, like figures like Mark Twain, who then wrote King Leopold's Soliloquy, which ridiculed the king for his rulership over the Congo. People like Booker T. Washington got hold of his work and wrote essays called Savagery in the Congo. So you have at the forefront of anti-colonial resistance in the late 1800s are Africans from the Americas. One particularly unique figure that was a part of this resistance is a gentleman by the name of George Washington Williams. And our ancestor, tremendous historian John Hope Franklin, wrote a book on George Washington Williams. It's called A Biography of George Washington Williams. Some people dub him as the first quote unquote African-American historian of note. Now, George Washington Williams was a Civil War hero. So he came out of a resistance domestically, right? In the sense that Black folks here who fought in the Civil War, they fought for their freedom. To the extent that Black folks are free in the United States is because they had the right to pick up a gun. That's really what enslaved Africans were waiting for, that opportunity where they could pick up a gun and fight for to liberate themselves from slavery. So George Washington Williams was a Civil War hero who also served in the Ohio legislature, studied at Howard University. So he went to the Congo in 1890 to see what was happening there, to see this quote unquote civilizing mission that King Leopold was talking about. And when he got there, he said, he wrote a letter to the king and said, in essence, what is unfolding here are crimes against humanity. So you have these Black leaders, these African leaders, men and women, who were internationalizing the Congo resistance, the resistance movement in the Congo against King Leopold II. And to an extent, it was successful. It was successful to the point where, in the sense that the king had to give up the Congo in 1908. But that wasn't liberation for the Congolese people, because the Congo was turned over to the Belgian state in 1908, where it was then ruled as a colonial outpost. So the resistance, of course, continued. And I spoke about the internal resistance and how the internal resistance in the Congo as historically married with the external resistance. So we have a figure by the name of Simon Kimbangu, which is who was an enormous figure of resistance for the Congolese people. Now, what is interesting about Simon Kimbangu, he was charged by the Belgian state for resisting colonialism, a charge for sedition. And he So he spent more time in jail from 1921 to 1950 or so than Nelson Mandela did. And what is interesting about Simon Kimbangu is that he was a Congolese figure in French-speaking Congo that was influenced by Marcus Garvey. So in essence, Kimbangu was a Garveyite, right? The missions, the African Americans who went to the Congo in the early part of the 20th century, they were either Garveyites or sympathizers of Marcus Garvey. So they would bring Garvey's publication to the Congo with them and share it with the Congolese. And Simon Kimbangu, one of the, probably the most noted Congolese resistance figure at the dawn of the 20th century, in essence, can either be considered a Garveyite or is definitely, at the very least, influenced by Garvey, Garvey's teachings, writings, and vision for the continent as a whole. So here we see, in the midst of this tremendous oppression, we see Africans establishing a blueprint for collaborating in an effort not only to liberate the heart of the African continent, but if you're talking about Garvey and you're influenced by Garvey, you're talking about liberating the entire African continent. So this is a centrality of the Congo historically in not only the tragedy that we've experienced as a people, but also in the resistance and the effort to liberate ourselves. So we are a part of a rich tradition that can be traced not solely, but certainly through the historical experience of the Congo. And the Congo looms large because I've shared already some of the reasons. But if you look at it on the map today, it's a country that's in the heart of the African continent, that straddles the equator, the only country on the continent is bordered by 9 other African countries, a country the size of Western Europe, almost 100 million people, and arguably the richest piece of real estate on the planet, particularly if we subscribe to what economists from Business Insider and the World Bank and others have stated, where it is an estimated $24 trillion worth of natural resources in the country. But it's not even so much the natural resources, but it's the value, the intrinsic value of those natural resources. I've shared the initial value, the human resource that was central to fueling the period of enslavement and development of capitalism. Natural resources, rubber at the dawn of the 20th century. When the United States sought to conquer Japan and launch its Manhattan Project and confront the Russians in a race to develop atomic weapon, Congo loomed large again because the uranium that was used in order to develop these atomic weapons, the overwhelming majority, 90+%, came out of the Congo, certainly in terms of the quality and the quantity. Some came out of Canada, but it was central to the atomic development of the atomic weapon so that the United States could compete with the Soviet Union. So if you trace at different periods of Congo's history, if you look at the natural resources being exploited, you see it is in alignment with the advancement of Western, quote unquote, the advancement of Western technology. So whether we're talking about copper and diamonds for especially industrial diamonds for heavy industry, and the development of military weapons and bullets, you name it, you see Congo looming large in terms of the West. And even if we fast forward to today, and maybe we'll wait, we'll come to today, but let me deal just a little bit and bring us forward some more, that we look at African Americans who supported the resistance in the Congo. We're talking about figures by like James Weldon Johnson, this gentleman by the name of Dora just wrote a book called Congo Love Song, which he named after one of James Weldon Johnson's songs, the title of one of his songs. We look at Langston Hughes, who was a strong supporter, wrote extensively in his poetry about Congo and the need to be in solidarity, the need to work in concert with our Congolese brothers and sisters to liberate the Congo and by extension, Africa. And probably no other figure has been engaged in the Congo, certainly in terms of articulating the centrality of the Congo to the liberation of Africans than Malcolm X, right? If you just read any of Malcolm's speeches, listen to any of Malcolm's speeches, he almost always talked about the Congo. When Malcolm was at Oxford, he spoke at Oxford, his entire debate was primarily around the Congo, right? That if you, he saw not only Congo, but Lumumba as a key figure. He even went as far as to say that Lumumba was the greatest African who ever traveled whoever walked on the African continent. Malcolm supported resistance figures in the Congo in the 1960s, pursuant to Lumumba's assassination. Some even speculate that when Malcolm met Che Guevara in Harlem, they had discussed the Congo and how to support the Congo movement. This is before Che had gone to the Congo in 1965. Malcolm at one of the initial meetings of the Organization of African American Unity, he was supposed to show a film on the Congo, and apparently the film wasn't ready, they didn't show it. And people in the audience were restless, and they're like, why are we focusing on the Congo anyways, right? We're catching hell right here in Harlem and in the United States. And Malcolm made this prescient point, and he said, he was referencing the brother in the audience who raised the question about why focus on the Congo anyways. He says, Malcolm responded that as long as we think we can be free in Mississippi without being free in the Congo, we will never be free in Mississippi. So what he did was he linked the struggle of Africans in the United States with Africans on the continent, that it is one global struggle, irrespective of whether you're in Mississippi, Harlem, Choco region of Colombia, the barrios of Rio de Janeiro, you name it, the islands in the Caribbean. We're talking about one African resistance because we all come from one root, from Africa. So Malcolm, more than any other figure here in the United States at the second half of the 20th century, uplifted the Congo and the centrality of the Congo to Africa more than any other figure here on this side of the Atlantic. On the other side of the Atlantic, we go to Kwame Nkrumah. And coming out of the 1958 All-African Peoples Conference in Accra, which was organized by Nkrumah and led by George Padmore, a brother from the Caribbean. This is where we saw just like major Pan-Africanists, Padmore, Nkrumah, Fanon, Mboya, you just name it. Keita, they're all, Touré, they're all there for 58. And this young figure from the Congo, Patrice Lumumba, who had not yet been elected prime minister, and who came out of a manufactured class by the Belgians. The Belgians manufactured this class called évolué, those who have been evolved. They're evolving towards European status, right? So that's where Lumumba came out of. And he was a product of his class. So he was, he was like an integrationist, right? He had kind words for the Belgians, talked about, how they could live side by side. So, however, when he went to Accra in 58, he was radicalized by the people who were there, and particularly by Nkrumah. And he saw Nkrumah as a father figure. And when Lumumba went back to the Congo in December of 58, by January, late December, January, there were like uprisings in the Congo, coming out of the Lumumbis. I guess we can call them that to this day. So he established a bond with Nkrumah, and both Nkrumah and Sékou Touré recognized the significance of the Congo to the project of the United States of Africa, to the point where Touré, Nkrumah, and even Keita stated that the Congo in this United States of Africa would serve as the capital, because it would be the industrial engine to drive the industrialization of the continent. Because of its location in the heart of the continent, you can project power anywhere on the continent from the Congo better than you can from any other country. And of course, even as GEOP laid out in its Federated States of Africa, because of its enormous wealth. So Nkrumah even took it to another level, and he wrote a book entitled The Challenge of the Congo. And I think even in the later publications, they revealed the agreement that Nkrumah and Lumumba had as it relates to the Congo serving as the capital for the Lumumba's Pan-African project, the United States of Africa. So here it is that on this side, we have Malcolm championing the Congo, its significance and centrality to a free and liberated Africa. And then on the continent itself, you have who some people describe as the father of Pan-Africanism, Kwame Nkrumah, championing the same thing. And what Nkrumah and Touré did, in spite of Nkrumah's failings as it relates to what unfolded with the assassination of Lumumba and the role that the Ghanaian troops played as a part of the UN, Nkrumah and Sékou Touré had gathered leading Pan-Africanists and dispatched them to the Congo to support Lumumba. Two among them, one is a woman Pan-Africanist that few people know about. Her name is André Blouin. She wrote a book, actually, Africa, My Country, and she played a central role in mobilizing Africans in Guinea in the late 50s to vote no against the French referendum that called for African states to be remain a part of the French Empire. So she was a key organizer and mobilizer during that period. So she was one of the best. So Touré and Nkrumah sent her and another brother from the Cameroon, some of you may be familiar with him, Félix Moumié, to the Congo to work with Lumumba. André Blouin wound up being the chief of protocol for Lumumba. And, but the main point is that what Nkrumah and Touré demonstrated was the significance of the Congo at that time, the importance of that country, to the point where they're dispatching their best in order to support the Lumumba resistance at the time, Lumumba political machine at the time, and he had not yet been elected to office. So the best among us, in terms of our freedom fighters, acknowledge and recognize the centrality of the Congo. So we at Friends of the Congo are keen about that tradition. So the work that we're doing now is in that tradition, in the tradition of Malcolm, in the tradition of Nkrumah, in the tradition of Garvey, in the tradition of George Washington Williams and William Shepard, that Congo is key for the future of the African continent. in terms of the liberation of the Congo. We believe that a free and liberated Congo will ostensibly lead to a free and liberated Africa. At the very least, we concur with Nkrumah that Congo can serve as the engine for the development of the African continent because of its strategic location, because of its enormous population, because of its incredible wealth, its water, the hydropower can serve as provide hydroelectricity or electrify the entire African continent, Southern Europe, and even the Middle East. Its agricultural capacity has the agricultural capacity to feed the entire African continent, or the expected population increase in the world by 2050, 1.2 billion people. That's the agricultural capacity that exists in the Congo. We're not talking about the natural resources, which I've already mentioned. We're talking about agriculture and water. And of course, the people, the human potential that exists. Close to 100 million people, median age 17, much like the rest of the African continent, made up of teenagers. So if the human capacity of the African youth can be harnessed and be enrolled in the tradition of Nkrumah, in the tradition of Malcolm, in the tradition of Garvey, in the tradition of Kimbangu, then we can assure, right? We can assure that we have an army of resistance fighters, an army of liberation fighters to continue that 500-year resistance with the expectation of breaking free and finally being free and liberated long beyond our tenure here as we have it now. So that is the essence of our work, enrolling the youth, introducing them to the tradition which they are responsible for or responsible to, but someone has to tell them. And with the European colonized education system and culture that is embedded throughout the African continent, it is a vital work that is necessary, not only in the Congo, but throughout the continent, you know, to break those shackles, those mental shackles that remain on the heads of African the African population, and maintained there by African leaders, you know, neo-colonial leaders. So that's the essence of Friends of the Congo's work and essence of our struggle. And where Congo is central, it's certainly not the only area, because we're very clear. One thing that we're clear about is that Congo is a European creation. No Congolese created the Congo state that we see it today. The Congo state, almost all of the African states were created by Europeans. So we're clear. We share with you, we share with the youth, you may be Congolese, but you're an African and you're fighting for African liberation. We just see Congo, you know, like Fanon sees Congo. You know, Fanon says that the continent, Africa is like shaped like a gun, you know, and the trigger is the Congo. You pull that trigger, you set off a combustion that ignite an entire continent. So that's the framework, because we know these colonial states that exist on the continent today are not of use to Africans. They're used to Europeans, where they can continue to divide and conquer Africa, particularly the French. So I wanted to just share or lay out the argument, really, for the centrality of the Congo, both as it relates to our tragedy as a people, which is ongoing, and also as it relates to our liberation, which is something that we're fighting for, and what Friends of Congo is doing in that regard, in terms of continuing in the tradition of the figures that I laid out for you, and enrolling the Congolese and other African youth in this tradition, so that we can be assured that we have an army of freedom fighters going forward. So I'll leave it right there for the initial presentation, and then just up for a dialogue, exchange, a discussion about what I've shared, and more importantly, the work that we're doing inside the Congo and outside of the Congo as we strive for a free and liberated Congo and a free and liberated Africa. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Brother Maurice, for that most informative presentation on the centrality of the Congo to African liberation. You have said some things that has reminded me of the time when I did a course on development economics, and I wrote my term paper on development in the Congo, and I mentioned Kwame Nkrumah's. Well, I did several references from Kwame Nkrumah's challenge of the Congo, and I mean it's like the professor was like, you know, where is this book? Where did you get it? Where did you get this? I mean, I thought he was. I mean, this is a man who was at the United Nations, and he didn't know of the book Challenge of the Congo. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that. But I'm saying that just reminded me all this about, you know, the centrality, as you is that is a great term, of the Congo in the development of Africa. Yes, Kwame Nkrumah had put out a great picture of that, and especially the part that what I was really referencing was dealing with hydroelectricity in Africa, and how Congo can be, you know, and its relevance to the Congo River. So, you know, that was beautiful, sir. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure the rest of the folks on this call here appreciate it. And now what I will do is if I will turn it over to the audience to ask if they have any questions, if they want to say anything regarding presentation.
Yes, I will. Brother Maurice, thank you so much for that our story history lesson. I hope a lot of people who hear this really take heed to how you broke it up. And what I most appreciated, because I kind of know you and I know the Friends of the Congo's strong stance that you all have been taking, but what I most appreciated are how you connected the ancestors who we all revere and the works and positions that they took where it relates to the Congo. One of our President Generals, Brother Redmond Battle, I don't know whether you ever got to meet him, but I sat at his feet and all he talked about, mostly every speech he's ever made, he mentioned the Congo and the different things that went on. So what I'm saying is, I don't have a question. I just want to guarantee you that the solidarity between today's UNIA, ACL, RC2020 government and the Friends of the Congo is like Malcolm, Garvey, and you mentioned so many, and Nkrumah, because we have to emulate the works that they did and left behind. And we're really, all the progressive organizations we have, we're really very behind in terms of emulating their works. So I say to you, my brother, thank you, Baba Mosi. I don't have no questions. I just want to thank my brother for laying it out. I mean, Maurice, I've heard the story many times told, not just by you, but a lot. But the way you laid it out in a short period of time, brother, all of our X generation and millennium generation need to hear it. And we need to do everything we can to get them to hear it and to get them to get involved, not only with us as the UNIA government, because, you know, I'm clear, all Africans are part of the UNIA. The UNIA was not established for a clique or a group of people. The UNIA is for all Africans, and those who, like us, who pay our dues, are responsible for the upkeep of the institution so that the people will have a proper structure to carry out the work, not only of Garvey, but all of our ancestors. So I stop on that. That's a solid, and we got our President General who's on the line. I know he's got some things, if he's still listening, to say. But Baba Mosi, I'm gonna leave it to you, and thank you, Baba Mosi, as President of the Division in Baba Congo, for being very insightful. June was the perfect time to bring our brother here with us, but it certainly should not be the last time. And I learned a whole lot more. I learned a whole lot more, Baba Mosi, than what I already knew. And so I'm going to review it myself, because let me close on this point. You know, us Garveyites are long-winded, Maurice, but let me close on this point. The trigger that you talked about, the continent and the shape of it, that's profound. If that's not
That's
a message,
that's for known.
that's what I'm saying. But if that's not something to wake you up to the reality about how, you know, central, how important the region of Africa is. And I say that because I heard what you said about the Congo, and I understand all of that history. We got to claim the whole continent and name it like we want it named, like it was before Urugu came into existence. Baba Mosi, I'm done.
Thank you, brother.
Baba Mosley.
Yeah,
This is Haru.
okay, Baba.
About 10 years ago, I attended a quantum physics Tesla conference, and there was an engineer from Germany, and they had reverse engineered the pyramids and the Tekkanen, and they were able to actually generate electrical power using the free energy of the in the atmosphere. And one of the things he said is that the Congo, in terms of the electrical potential for energy generation, has the highest difference of electrical potential on the planet. And what they're proposing is that if they were able to build a complex of pyramids and Tekkanen in the Congo at the size of the Sahara Desert, is that they said they can actually use semiconductor technology to transfer energy and power all of Europe with no energy cost. So as we go forth in terms of the next 100 years, and talking about renewable and other forms of energy, the Congo is still what Maurice said is the gun point, but also is the energy high point of the planet.
No doubt, my brother. No doubt. You know, all those minerals, and you know, you can understand why the people of the Congo has to suffer because of European greed or need. You know, just imagine if you had the technical ability as Africans to, you know, just extract or utilize those minerals for your own development, leaving out the Europeans, where would Africa be? And I think that is why today the Europeans must keep Africa in chaos, because they want to build and they don't need Africa to build, because they need no challenges. And why they're challenging the Chinese today, as I heard them, the president of the United States openly challenging China. And because why? It's not like China is really an enemy. Is that what China is doing is developing, and they don't want to be challenged. Now, after saying that, I have I'd like to see if we can put this together. Now, you mentioned the Berlin Conference, and how the Europeans got together, and the decisions they made to not fight over the Congo, to use the Congo as a pathway to exploit the rest of Africa. That was in 1887, wasn't it?
85, 84, 85.
Okay. Now, today, we're hearing from a conference not too long ago, NATO talking the same way. So this hasn't ended. Like you mentioned, it has not ended. You have the Berlin Conference and the second Berlin, this other conference they had this year tells us, just like you said, that this European exploitation, imperialism continues. Okay, does anybody else have another question? Yeah.
I want to say something quickly about what the brother just said. You know, Congo, it has metals or minerals for the almost all the metals on the periodic chart. And it's just a rich area. It's not only rich in natural resources, it's also rich in history. You know, It's out of the Congo that came the oldest mathematical artifact in the world that we know, the Ishango bones, which date about 25,000 years ago, which served both as a lunar calendar and a binary counting system. So why do I say that? Because the notion is that, the misnomer is that we don't have the cultural capacity to develop those resources that we have for our own, but we were doing that before the Europeans came. If you read anything from Basil Davison, DeGraff Johnson, John Henry Clark, you look at the lost cities of Africa, you see how those historians documented how Congolese and other Africans were working with iron, extracting their own resources, transporting them to the East Coast off the, Kilwa, Sofala, Mombasa, and then trading with the Chinese, right? So no European was involved in this, where Africans are extracting their resources, transporting them, shipping them, and having trade, international trade. So it's vital that we're clear about that, this brings us back to Van Sertima's statement, which is so key. He says it was tantamount to an atomic weapon being dropped on the African continent. That's how he described the trafficking of Africans during the so-called slave trade. So it's so important for us to know that a part of our journey, right, is to, when we talk about free and liberated, is to reconnect with that free and liberated self that we had before the encroachment of Urugu, right? That's the part of that cultural journey, that spiritual journey that we're under as well. So I just wanted to make that point, that we're talking about a cultured people. And if you follow our Barbadian brother Marischal, just for us to put all of this in context, he said that civilizations go in cycles. And it just so happens that Urugu is having this very short cycle, 500 years. You listen to any of the speeches of Dr. Clark, he'll tell you that's just like a drop of water, or if you even check the history of Kemet, you see 500 years is really nothing. But the point is that civilizations go in cycles. So we're in part, we're preparing for our return to our rightful place as the mothers and fathers of global civilization.
I see. Okay, and if there's anyone else, any questions from anyone else at this time?
Giza. Hello. Hello. How you doing? This is Baba Congo. Can you hear me?
Yes, Baba Congo, we can hear you.
And both
hey, Maurice, this is one of, I've heard you like about 3 or 4 times, and I like that every time you do something, I learn something. Your presentations are not canned. Well, I think the person, Simon Kimango, I think he was a Episcopalian priest. He was Catholic. Was he a priest?
You could characterize him as a priest. Yeah, I mean, he tapped into, certainly Christian. He was considered heretic because he mixed the traditional with the new.
Yeah, and they still have a following going on with it. But what I'd like to talk about now is that the Congo did a lot for Belgium, and I mean, we have European reparations needed, and to me, like we should own Belgium for the least, and France next, and all the others. For all the things that have been done, because everybody talk about the 6 million Jews that may have been killed that were killed in World War II. But the thing is, we got 15 million people that out of one country. I mean, the whole of West Africa and East Africa, the slave trade killed a lot of people, and I was wondering if they have a reparation movement going on for the Congo.
Yes, how can I say? Not of note. You know, it's kind of interesting. I know some of the folks in Belgium do, but in the Congo itself, you know, there isn't a notable reparations movement. And, you know, part of it has to do with the fact that, you know, a lot of Africans, right, especially the leaders, their mind is still colonized, you know, so that's really like one of the biggest challenges, right? You know, you're talking about owning Belgium, like Congolese are trying to get to Belgium. You know what I'm saying? So they see Belgium as something to aspire to, you know. The president of the Congo thanked the Belgians. The Belgians said they're going to return, you know, some of the stuff that the cultural items that they stole from the Congo, and the Congolese president is thanking the Belgians for, you know, for keeping it in good condition for them, you know. And that's coming from the highest office in the land, right? So, and that's like normal, you know. So it just gives you a sense, like one of the biggest challenges, I mean, is really, and then we're working on it, especially one of the biggest challenges is the education, the re-education, the decolonizing, you know, of the African mind, right? You know, the kind of work that Aikwe Arma talks about, right? And in rural Congo too, because most of Africa is rural. So one of the things that we do is we work with local organizations that are in rural areas, and we are setting up learning centers and feeding information to local radio networks. So that's one of the projects that we have that's taking place in rural Congo, where we're setting up learning centers where, you know, books and in some instances, access to the internet so you can download books and information is being set up. And also the local radio stations, we're organizing the community radio stations to broadcast Pan-African content so that, you know, we can have an alternative education channel, let's say. Because really the biggest challenge, I mean, I've discovered over the last 20 years or so working with Congolese and other Africans is just our minds. It's like, you know, we really believe that the European is superior. And I understand that because that comes from, you know, hundreds of years of violence and suppression and propaganda. So we just have to break through that. We have to put in the work, you know, as our brother Kwame Ture says, we have to organize, organize, organize. So that's key. So the notion of reparations movement in the Congo is very, I mean, some parts of the Congo, their museum, they still have statues of King Leopold up, right? And even the former president of the Congo, Joseph Kabila, he did a video and he was inviting business people to come to the Congo. And he said in the video, wish I had it now, I'd pull it up and share the screen. He says, come, you know, he's speaking to European business people, come and install yourself like Stanley did, right? So any of you know anything about Congo's history, right? In Africa, you know that Henry Morton Stanley, he's the one that drafted up the map of the Congo, carted it out, and took it to King Leopold II at his geography conference to sell it to him, right? He set the paradigm for the ownership of the Congo by King Leopold II. So for a Congolese president to say, come and install yourself like Stanley did, it just goes to show the type of education and information that's missing at the highest level of the Congolese state. And that's two presidents I just shared with you, the statements that they have made publicly and internationally. You know, so if you're a European knowing the history of Congo, you just like sitting back and laughing and saying, oh, this is going to be easy to continue, stealing from these people.
The other thing I find is the Congo is so blessed to have so much minerals, so many minerals, that it's the unfortunate thing is that everybody's with the borders sharing about eight countries or 9 countries. All the rebels that leave Uganda and Rwanda and all those places, they all come and I would say they're doing illegal mining or illegal stuff to fund their guerrilla tactics, but it's destroying the Congo. It's violating their sovereignty, and it, there's not. I don't know. My first hero was Lumumba, and I find that the Congo has never been at peace in my lifetime. I mean, even before my lifetime. So I don't know what's the solution, or what you think should be worked towards the future.
Yeah, and that's right. It's not by accident. This is planned. As Congo's recent Nobel Peace Prize winner, Dr. Denis Mukwege, said that it's by design that Congo's been destabilized. And I know you mentioned the rebels, but at the end of that chain, right, are the corporations. Like you have these neo-colonial agents, right, like Yoweri Museveni in Uganda, and Paul Kagame in Rwanda in particular. I don't know how people present him as Pan-Africanist. We should have a show or a presentation on why Paul Kagame is not a Pan-Africanist, right? But in any case, so Museveni and Kagame, what they do is like they unleash rebels in the Congo to destabilize the Congo. And Museveni, he gets the gold and the timber. Kagame gets the coltan and the tin. And they're not manufacturing it, at least not yet. And then they just pass it on to the corporations. And that's how the corporations get Congo's minerals for, one of the ways anyways, for pennies on the dollar, because you have these neo-colonial agents that Thomas Sankara talked about that's facilitating access to Congo's riches by destabilizing the Congo, and also really carrying out US foreign policy in the region, because Rwanda and Uganda are two of the largest military beneficiaries from the United States. AFRICOM, they get intelligence support, they get military support, equipment, financial support. They couldn't do in the Congo what they've done for the past 20 years without the backing of the United States. They couldn't have gotten away with the type of killing that they've done to Africans, right? To Africans. They've killed Africans in the tens of thousands without the United States running diplomatic and political interference at the international level, right? So the US government, US corporations are complicit in the destruction that's being waged by agents of neocolonialism on the African continent. And this is so vital for us as Black people to understand, because what we see in the media is, quote unquote, this insane term, Black and Black violence. Like people say, well, isn't Africans killing Africans? Well, on the face of it, it may be. On the face of it may be Africans fighting, but the weapons, the intelligence, the financing, the arming, all coming from the outside and being fueled from the outside. And the stooges, like the Kagames and the Musevenis, they're the ones who are being backed. Just look at their budget. Half of Rwanda's budget come from outside. You know, hundreds of millions of dollars in weapons go to Museveni. So yeah, no, these you know, these are the modern day Shambes. These are the Shambes that if Malcolm was alive today, he'd be talking about Kagame and Museveni like he did about Shambe at Oxford in the early 1960s. So these are the modern day Chambes that are on the African continent. And it's important for us to recognize that by their actions, not by what the propaganda machine, or even just look at their closest friends, you know. Kagame is rolling with Bill Clinton. He's rolling with Tony Blair. He's rolling with Adelson out of Vegas. He's rolling with Netanyahu out of Israel. This is the company that they keep, you know. So we just shouldn't be duped. We shouldn't be duped by them at all, and recognize the destructive role that they're playing. They're anti-African. They're not Pan-Africanists. They. When we talk about Sankara and Nkrumah and Keita and Touré and all those figures, you know, Samora Machel, you can't put Kagame and Museveni in the same category. No.
Yeah, thank you for that answer to the question, my brother. Now, you know, a little bit of mirth here, I guess I can say. You know, you mentioned this manufactured group in Belgium during the colonial period called the Evolue, right?
Yes, yes.
And it sounds like Evolue. And I was wondering, no, you know, we got this manufactured group here in the United States called the Boule. Could there be some kind of
you're channeling some Steve Coakley right now.
Is that right? Oh, I mean, it sounds similar.
It's not fundamentally. Listen, I mean, one thing about white supremacy is global, and the formula is global. You know, so I mean, it's not fundamentally different. I mean, and not even really white supremacy, but conquerors and relationship between the conquerors and the conquered. The conquerors are always trying to pull someone from the conquered and use them as an instrument to control the masses. That's just
miseducated. I mean, I mean, so Boule could very well be a corruption of the Evolue, right? When you mentioned Steve Coakley, I've never heard that. I didn't know that that was something that was discussed before. But yeah, I mean, you see that. I mean, in the colony, you know, I grew up in a colony, and I know how that works.
Yeah,
I know how you're educated to think. So I'm not surprised that you still have in the Congo this sort of mentality, and where people are still striving to be European or be like European, or their gods are European. Everything that's European is good, and everything that's African is bad.
Yeah.
Even looking at yourself in the mirror, you may decide, you know, hey, and I want to look like the European. So we got bleaches selling by the millions of dollars. And you know, there was one time in the Congo, there were some people who were some guys, let me put it, poor guys living in the heart of the ghetto, but they used to dress up in the most expensive kind of clothing and walk around the city, Kinshasa, and they were the kind of guys that young people wanted to emulate to be, because they looked so good and they were walking out. And I think we've had that problem here in the United States. You know, when I first came and was living in Brooklyn, I mean, you had these guys who were, I mean, the way they dressed and everything else, and A lot of them were pimps too, but I mean, they're in your neighborhood. They're spending money and they're doing things that, you know, young people want to do. Young people want to be like them because they look like they're having a good time. So we have right there in the Congo, I think it's probably happening where young people want to do the same thing that people who they have that mindset of just themselves. They just want to look good, have money, look rich, not even being rich, but looking rich. And we're wasting our money buying all these European trappings instead of, you know, investing in an area where we can develop our economy, our neighborhood economy, our own family economy. I mean, it's crazy. But, you know, the challenge here is how do we re-educate?
Yeah, that is a challenge. And you were talking about the sapeur, right?
I don't
Sappeurs,
recall the name, but yeah, you know.
yeah, sapeur. They're still very much present. In the English translation for them is the Society of Tastemakers and Elegant People. They dress like Europeans, and you know they come out of the most impoverished conditions, but they have the European clothes. I mean, there's so much to that you know psychiatrists you know can go through as it relates to poverty and white supremacy, colonization. But that's certainly a symptom of the challenge that we face in terms of, you know, the education process and what it's going to take to re-educate our folks. I think you were talking about earlier, just education. You know, I'm from Jamaica. I went through the same thing. You're really educated away from your African self, you know, and not just in a benign way either. You know, depending on the parents that you have, the way you speak. If you don't speak in the colonial terms, you can get a beating for that, right? If you hang around what they call the Obia people, the people who beat the drums and, you know, chant at night, I mean, you can get grounded and whoopings for that, right? So not only you benignly educated away from your African self, but it's also reinforced or backed up by force, right? By whoopings. So you're literally getting the African beat out of you as a child, right? So that's why we have to be patient with the re-education process, because some of us, the African has been literally beaten out of us, not by the European, but by our own parents, right? Who've been miseducated themselves. So it's just a huge, huge challenge. I didn't know how connected Jamaica was to the Congo and Africa until I went through a re-education process some 20, 30 years later in my life. It wasn't an organic, natural development for me, even though I was right there in the community, even though I heard the drums beating on the hills almost every night, you know? But I wasn't educated towards that. I was educated away from that. I was educated towards the European, both in content and in language, and being colonized by the British. So if you live through that colonization process and you have parents who've been colonized, you know that, you know, the colonizing of the African mind is like a protracted, consistent process that's many times backed up by force by people who actually love you, right? So it's no small undertaking to decolonize the African mind.
I have a question. The current president or prime minister is taking office and he's totally anti-China, but I don't know if he's pro-French or pro-Belgium or United States. I can't. In the last election, he was the least favorite to win. And when I find people win like that, usually the West most likely finance them to win. or did the counting. What do you think about this new guy that they have?
That is of the current president?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, unfortunately today, right, really throughout the continent, not just in the Congo, what you find is like the choices that you have are really, one bird with, it's the same, right? With both wings, as pie. That the West usually has its bet on not just one person, but on both sides, right? So it really didn't matter who won in the Congo. It would still be the winners before the elections, they're in the pocket of the West, and after the elections, they're in the pocket of the West. So it just didn't matter. It really didn't fundamentally matter as it relates to relations with the West. Like there's a film out that's narrated by Lauryn Hill. I think it's called On Violence, named after one of Fanon's books. And it really goes into the extent to which violence was used to remove the independence leaders and any progressive or revolutionary leaders from the continent. So irrespective of where you go on the continent today, you're going to find agents of neocolonialism. It's really, I'm hard pressed to identify a leader in the vein of Nkrumah, or a Sankara, or Michelle, any of those leaders. It's really hard to find someone like that today because they've been removed by violence, overthrown, assassinated, and that has really left an imprint for people coming up that, if you take a certain stance, you're better be prepared to lose your life. So what we see, the choices that are given to the people are not fundamentally different when it comes to matters of relations with the West.
I've looked it up, but what's the literacy rate of the Congo? The population is almost 100 million. It's about 90 million people. What's the literacy rate?
I think they have it around 60, 70%, something like that.
Okay, I mean, is the literacy rate based on 10 years or 12 years of education, or just that someone going to the 5th grade and can read and write?
Oh, that goes right through to the university level.
So we're saying here that the education system is widespread in the rural areas, etc. But they're being learned.
It's a colonial education system.
Okay,
it's like much of the rest of Africa. The African leaders, they haven't really changed the curriculum that they inherited from the colonial era. Congolese, if you speak to Congolese today, they will complain that they know more about European history than they know about Congolese history. More about European figures than they know about Congolese figures. You speak to any Congolese, just about any Congolese, they'll tell you that.
Well, maybe they all need to do like I did. I left the country that was doing the same thing to me and to be educated somewhere else. I mean, it's quite shocking to me.
They're organizing to change it. They're organizing to change it, but it's going to take a while.
I think things are changing much in the Caribbean, but it's still not to the extent where we would be comfortable in seeing that people are adjusting themselves to be who they really are and not emulating Europeans and wanting to look and be like them. And I mean, culturally as well as, I guess educationally. It's tough, because you
Yeah.
depend on the economics of the international trade, and you know, you can easily be victimized if you kick against the goals, as they say. I mean, what do you do in this sense? I mean, let's look at Venezuela or Cuba or somewhere where they're trying to educate their people out of colonial mindedness, and you're victimized. You become you know, you not just victimized, but you're the leaders of this type of governance. You know, they become beasts.
Excuse me, brothers. I must chime in here. As
Mhm.
being one born here in Banneker City, that problem is the same problem that exists in DC, in LA, in South Carolina. And the best way to describe it, Baba Mosi, is monopoly capitalism and exploitation of the minds of African people, regardless to where you're from. Because I could tell you stories when I was growing up of what we thought here in DC. You know, we didn't know enough about our culture to have any clue about us even saying we were African. So I just wanted to throw that in because, especially since we broadcasting out, we got the same problem regardless to where we are. Now, of course, it's worse on the continent because it's more of us there. And the continent is our homeland. But it's the same central problem. Africans have been not only miseducated, they've been programmed to be animalistic and non-humanistic. I say that. And Garvey, when I joined the UNIA, you know, the elders told me, Garvey said we were our own worst enemy. I said, what? But it's not that we are our own worst enemy, it's that the enemy has used us to become against ourselves. And so I just had to throw that in, and I'll stop on that point. But you're right, all over the world, Venezuela, anywhere you go, we're Africans, but we have consciousness breaking through because you made it, Baba Mosi, you made it, Brother Maurice, I made it. So what we have to do is emulate our ancestors and make sure that the new babies being born don't get the same Urugu miseducation, and we re-educate them and do the best we can with the X generation and the millenniums.
Absolutely.
And I hate to say it, but everybody ain't gonna make it. And we don't need everybody. We need enough of us. We need enough of us.
That's true, Brother Singo and Baba Mosi, if I may speak.
Yes, sir. We were waiting for you.
I've been listening.
Okay.
The rule, of course, is the oppression of the African, aka the Negro, across the board has been to set us in place to be servants to a European master. They have eroded in our minds our history, which is why the president of the Congo could praise the white man for taking care of our historical artifacts. That's why he could do that. Because he's been educated to say, I appreciate you taking care of my stuff because I didn't have the ability to. Africa is awakening, I agree. But the challenge and the charge is going to be how you offset what has been put in place, which is that only the economic exploitation, but the military domination of a people to us. We do that by changing the mindsets of our people and instilling in them the type of consciousness and therefore then the willingness to rise up and challenge the oppressor. Because you're not oppressed until you know it. You're not a slave until you don't know that you're free. Because then it all falls in line. Freedom is not only a mindset, it is the natural order of nature. But you can't function if your nature has been reordered. You don't have to worry about going in the back door anymore. You've been programmed generationally to go there. I only bring that up because the struggle is for real. Yes, the generation is now chomping at the bit, challenging. But again, until we are in control of some of the economics and control of some of the education and control of some of the governmental structures in a universal African nationalist philosophy, aka a Pan-Africanist view. This is destined to complete itself. And Senghor, you made a point. You say we made it out. Yeah. And we're making a way for others to come out. Yes. Will they come? Yes. Will we see it? As I've said before, we're working for the next 100 years. My brother Maurice said earlier that we are in the paradigm shift to return ourselves back to our proper place because we go through cycles of racial development and implementation and control. He said, once we were, now we aren't. So we go through the cycle and we're in preparation. Well, I say this is part of the preparation in reference to conversation, but it's also part of the preparation to begin to think that you have a right to control your destiny. You see, we have to make our youth understand that it is not and I hate this word, it's not any man that determines their destiny, regardless of his color. It is you who controls your destiny based on the philosophy, the education, and the cultural reality that you feel inside you. We aren't our own worst enemy anymore. We just got to open the damn door. Sante, brother.
Asante, brother.
Appreciate that. Asante.
That was the President General. And there's somebody, did I hear somebody trying to ask a question?
Yes,
Okay, Brother James, go right ahead.
yes, Brother Maurice.
Yes, yes, brother.
You're very, very knowledgeable, very much true. And the last time that I really was working with and dealing with the organization that you're representing in the Congo was back in 2010, 2012. I forget the brother who was going to Capitol Hill all the time, and the sister, and they even had a concert down at the Howard Theater and brought a group. An old group. Yes. And at that point in time, I got with the sister, and I belong to an organization that meets in Howard County. At Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. Yeah, at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. And before our meetings, we would have different organizations that we would intend to support, come and speak, and did a wonderful job. But I was just always kind of freaked out behind how these devils so long ago have gotten a hold of our people and just continue to rape and pillage and keep their contacts with the same peoples that they wrote about, that they write about, the same families, and for pieces of metal and so on and so forth will send our own people from across the border or from a different family and come and take people's out. I think we were talking about at that time 294,000 people being taken out since 1995 or something like that. I mean, it was just, I mean, it just like, I didn't, it's hard to comprehend. It's so much. It's so deleterious, and we know everything is an education process, but we also know that these families are coming across these mercenaries, our own people, and taking our people out so that they can bring in some more people and build camps so that they can take the natural resources out. And then, I mean, just like when we threw the Belgians out, well, they weren't just going on the way out. They blew up all of their own bridges and everything that they had built there so that they would continue to destabilize us in our own land.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just been the way, and they keep their same contacts. They write about it, and they you know, it's the way of death. It ain't the way of life. I mean, it's just, I mean, we can financially, in our essences, speak about, and but I just, I mean, we can intellectualize, but you know, people are dying every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
our people are dying every day, and we got to figure something. We got to do something.
yeah. Well, I mean,
finance is one thing, but
yeah. No, I mean, you can pour $1 trillion into the Congo, and that's not going to be the difference maker.
Exactly.
I shared with you the biggest challenge is the mind and the educating of the
That's
mass.
right. That's right.
Slavery. That's being done. Yeah, that's being done every day. People are organizing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a money issue. Trust me. If it was a money issue, it's probably been solved a while ago.
No.
But it's organizing. It's consciousness, and
absolutely.
I don't want to leave folks with the notion that, you know, I really want to emphasize that at the end of my presentation, I really focus on the work that's being done.
Yes.
Organizations
You're quite eloquent. And a beautiful brother, and all the brothers who are working in the movement, who want to speak out, can and do.
Yeah.
But how do we do on the ground when the shit's going down, and somebody's controlling us to perpetuate their agenda?
Yeah. It's an enormous challenge. Yeah.
And that's what's so large, you know, it's just.
But I mean, chattel slavery was large as well, right? You know?
Yeah.
We were able to break those shackles, at least of the physical shackles.
Yes.
The legacy of the mental shackles are, you know, is enduring. But
well, we've got work to do. Let's put it this way: we've got work to do.
Yeah.
Got work, and the work will be to educate, re-educate, and it's going to take a lot of us coming together. It's going to take unity, especially for those of us outside of Africa who are seeing what's going on. You know, some people in Africa are not leaving their province, not leaving their village, not and like you were saying, the rural areas and so on. You're now bringing with your organization. You're trying to bring information to them through, you know, internet, radio, etc., and so forth, so that people can be educated, to have knowledge of their culture and who their people really are, and where the extension of them as Africans. And as soon as we can I guess, put some effort in this to help you guys out as well. You know,
I mean, you have. I mean, we've brought, people from the Congo, from the rural villages, and y'all, all of you, UNIA has been a big supporter.
well, yeah, we and we'll continue to do that, and
Yeah.
what it is too for especially for those of us in Washington D.C. Division 330, from which this forum is coming from. We have to do a little bit more in organizing, a little bit more in getting people to come together, a little bit more in getting people to contribute to the development of those minds we're trying to create.
Yeah,
Not only in Africa, but here as well. The work is here. We have to educate people here. And the people are so distracted with what's in the media. The media, I mean, the technical extension of the, well, you got the internet, which can be good and bad. I mean, but people are so distracted. I mean, you got TikTok, you got this, you got that. I mean, when you see the stuff that's going on, that how people are, people don't want to be educated, so to speak. It's like they want to be entertained, and that's a problem. Can we do education and entertainment at the same time? Maybe we got to find a way to do that. But my feeling is that if we're having a forum like this where we're discussing a situation that needs to be mended, people will say, "Oh man, I'm tired of hearing that. Oh, gee, I'm hearing all this stuff." You got people who are like that. They don't want to hear. They feel they got so much. Their problem is up to here with them, and they don't want to have other people's problem on top of that. So what is inculcated is a selfishness in our society, among our people. We're for self because I work hard and I got mine, and you can work the same way I work to get yours, or something like that. And this is inculcated through the media and even education.
Yeah.
So anyway, we brother Maurice, thank you very much. We've run out of time, and I'm so grateful that you have come on tonight, this evening, to be with us and to present, and hopefully, we sort of like want to make this an annual thing.
Yeah,
to update the situation. What's going on?
It needs to be.
Yeah. So you can expect us to call on you again
I'm at your disposal
next year.
I'm at your disposal.
As we will do with other people as well. The Division 330, we only do this on a monthly basis. But the UNIA may be coming through with some other things. And so don't be shocked if you call upon coming from the parent body or some other UNIA. You okay?
It's
an honor. Thank you very much again.
Yes, thank you.
And I thank everyone who has been on the program. I thank the listeners. I thank the viewers on Facebook, and I will thank those who will view it at some point, because this will be on Facebook, it will be on YouTube, and hopefully you have gotten something out of this to make you feel better when it comes to Africa and the development of the Congo. We really need to have the Congo a central part of our development in Africa. It has the ability. It just needs to be worked. It's just like we say in the Congo, in the UNIA. All Africans are members of the UNIA.
That's right.
You just have to start paying your dues to be active. So we're all Africans, but we have to start contributing towards the development of Africa as individuals. So I thank you again. And,
thank you.
Yes, sir. And I guess if that's the last word, and I hope I'll close with some music. And this is coming again from Franco. And so it's going to be a little more lively than the one we had before. So here we go.